flex those creative muscles in you so that you can do pop and roots and jazz and gospel and all of it.
Right.
How does that feel to be able to navigate all those different forms? It looks effortlessly to us.
It looks effortless. I mean, I think the technique of any classical maîtrise, whether it's dance or theater or singing, you're all about the technique being invisible, right? So when something looks like it's hard, I sometimes will coach singers for whom things come easy, or pianists. I was like, well, make that gap look further than it is, because your audience needs to feel like it's hard. Now, I don't want it to be hard, but the theater of it is that we need to feel like you're putting in some effort, and because we want to invest with you. And when I went to explore other styles of music, that was very much rooted in my desire to collaborate. I was going to have to stretch myself if I was going to get the colleagues I wanted. If I wanted Aaron Davis in my life, I was going to have to humble myself and stretch musically, classically, like technically, in order for us to be able to work together. Well, now that I know that he's sort of somebody who will work with anyone, because he's just the most kind-hearted and humble person that I have in my life besides my parents and my husband, I realized that he would have stretched in any direction I asked him to. But my inspiration behind being willing to sing other types of music is because I love the people that are in that camp who make me look better than I am, and I try to meet them with what I have. So then you just have to make the sound that's required.
What is the best advice you ever heard given to you?
Stand up straight. Your posture will do a lot of it for you, right? You could be dying on the inside, and if your shoulders are back, nobody knows. Nobody has any idea. Stand up straight. My father, that was the piece of advice. And you're not your own. Like, you were bought and paid for with a very hefty price. You know, if the blood of Jesus did what it was supposed to do, and it did, we can stand tall, knowing that we are perfectly loved at every single moment, and it cannot be improved upon itself because God can't improve on himself. So if you're loved by perfection, it doesn't make you perfect, but it does make you perfectly loved. And so I do think my parents, and what I try to do for my sons, is sort of just act out of the call to what is higher. So you're constantly occupying an elevated space, and it doesn't make you better. It just makes you blessed, you know, and blessing is being set apart by a perfect and loving God, right? So don't get it twisted. It's aggressive, you know, but it has to be, given what we're facing in these troubled times.
And is that the advice you would give to others, to young artists wanting to excel? What advice would you give to them?
I mean, the sternum plays a huge part in your vocal production. So when we say like breasts up, like that's doing a lot for your technique, in addition to giving you a physiological posture that sort of does the confidence for you. And I don't know what comes first. Like, I don't know if I'm confident enough to have good posture or if good posture makes me confident. I don't think it matters. Sometimes you have it and your posture reflects it, your singing reflects it, but most of the time you don't. Like, most of the time I'm trying my best to believe that I should be taking up this space.
What do you think engagement in the arts does to strengthen our culture and maybe even ourselves as Canadians?
Well,
it's kind of like the why does art matter question.
Art is essential to a civilization because it's the only thing that remains once we're dead. So history is pretty dry until you have a painting to go with it. The Bible is just a text until you realize how it's reverberated through history, and its intended use is to make us serve one another in honesty and truth as we work on our salvation with fear and trembling. And these relics of art that reflect a culture will also tell us of a people oppressed who were freed from any variant on oppression, because we are ever coming up with new and inventive ways to hoard our toys and to be selfish. Right. And then the artists come along and say, actually, that is not just. And we sing about it, we paint about it, we write about it, we dance about it. And without the arts, we wouldn't know who we were. So it seems silly for artists to have to be constantly legitimizing themselves when they're the only thing that remains at the end of a civilization. When the cockroaches are crawling out of the woodwork and we've destroyed ourselves, there will be song. The fact that we came out of whatever origin story or mythology you want to believe, and the first thing we did was make music or beat on something together in rhythm. I mean, it's pretty rudimentary. It's only when we start to realize that we can own that we start wars. Yeah. Because we just don't want to share our toys, because we are inherently wicked. But the arts show us how good we can have the capacity to be.
Beautiful.
It is that. It is
Love
simple.
That.
You know.
Yeah.
It's. Yeah. I mean, I just want, you know, on the question of race and of being a Black opera singer and of reflecting a time that has allowed me, you know, in a political way, to rightfully stand in a place up until this point occupied by not me. Mm-hmm. I see my position in time as being its own protest, and you would think that it would be a foregone conclusion that I could sing whatever music I want, but I still get not Black enough, and then I still get not white enough. So you have to have enough people stand in uncomfortable spaces long enough, having biases revealed and prejudices exposed, so that we're not tripping over the vernacular of having a Black woman opera. It turns out all your opera stars that you can name, whether it's Jessie or Leontine or Portia or Marian Anderson or Denise Graves, like, turns out they're all Black. Mm. So there's a kitchen table discussion where we have to start encouraging our Black brothers and sisters into the classical arts, because that's where the conversation starts, is around the kitchen table. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not replaced by a man, right? Like, more often than not, you're not going to be like, oh, gee, how hard is it to be a woman in your industry? And I'm like, well, it's pretty awesome, actually, because I occupy a feminine space. Mm. So as a second-year seminary student, as the debate rages on as to who should be speaking in the pulpit and what sex should be behind there, and the gender, whether it's equality or complementarianism or can women preach or teach, I'm like, that's so dumb. Like, I can't believe you're even asking that. Yeah, yeah. But again, for such a time as this, I have been made, right? I wouldn't have lasted in like a generation previous to this one. I would have just been in the fetal position, because that's not my fight. Right. I just know that no one else can play Measha Brueggergosman-Lee but Measha Brueggergosman-Lee. And the gifting comes in the package it's born into.